I brought my notes because I have so much detail that I want to share with all of you that I don't want to miss anything. There are three things that I want you to get out of this session this afternoon. The first one is we definitely don't die. And you all know that. Only our bodies die when we're done with them. Our bodies are like old used cars. When you're done with them, you slough them off and you don't think about them again. We don't need to be afraid of dying. Dying is the natural process. It's just like birth. It's very natural, nothing to be afraid of. And dying is how we get back home. It's the only way to get back. So don't be afraid of it. And today what I'm going to share with you, I think everyone's going to walk away with just a sense of, okay, this is going to be wonderful when I get back. And I've talked to a lot of you who have lost people, whether it's been your children, spouses, good friends. I can tell you unequivocally that you don't have to worry about them. They are having an absolutely wonderful, incredible time over there. Because for them, time doesn't exist. There was a girl, is Wendy here? I think Wendy already left. I was talking to Wendy earlier, she has a reading today. I was talking to Wendy, and she said that her husband died, and they'd been together for 20 or 25 years, and that he passed last year. Well, for them on the other side, time is like this. It doesn't exist like it does for us. So I've heard a lot of people will say, well, why haven't I heard from my loved one? Why haven't they contacted me? It's because time is different for them. They could have just gotten there, where it's been maybe a year or two for you. So time is different. I also want to talk about what is a typical near-death experience. Have any of you in this room had an NDE? Anybody? Okay, so nobody has had one in this room, so that's good. That'll be good for me. I can explain how they all work. The common near-death experience, and I know you've probably all heard about this, is when a person is having maybe some kind of an accident. They had a car accident, or they're in the hospital going through something, and they actually die. What happens next is they'll pop out of their body, and they'll be like on the ceiling, and they'll be looking down, and they'll see people working on them, whether it's paramedics or whether it's hospital staff. Then they'll see a tunnel, and then they'll see the white light. I know everybody has probably heard of those things happening with people's near-death experiences. I see a lot of head shaking. That's what happens to people. When I had my near-death experience, which was about 20 years ago, I didn't have any of that. My near-death experience skipped the typical near-death experience, and I was able to go on a journey to the other side, and it was because of my spirit guide. And I'll tell you about how mine happened, my near-death experience happened. I was in my early 20s, and I was riding a moped, or like a scooter, and I turned around this corner, and there was a squirrel sitting right in the middle of the road. And so I turned to avoid him, and I crashed into a tree, and I had to have the tendons of my hand reattached. So the day of surgery comes, and I'm in there talking to the anesthesiologist, and they're asking me, do you want to have a local, or do you want to be put out? And I said, I want to be put out. I don't want to take a chance on feeling anything. So they put me out. Well, I had never been in the hospital before. I had never had surgery before, and I certainly had never had any kind of anesthesia before. So they start putting in the anesthesia, and I can feel it going through my arm. And when it got to my heart, I had some kind of allergic reaction, and I died right there on the table. The strangest thing to me was when I opened my eyes, I was standing in the most beautiful building I had ever seen. And my first thought was, there is no way that surgery could have happened that fast. And that I'm in a recovery room. Because I just closed my eyes while I died, and I didn't know it. So this building that I was in, it was absolutely the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And I don't want to forget this part. In my left ear, I heard, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide, and I'm going to show you the other side." Now, I don't know what you guys would have thought. I just said, okay. I didn't want to miss this opportunity, and I thought, maybe this is just some kind of a joke, but I'm going to go with this. This sounds like a lot of fun. So here's what happened. I'm going to jump into this. When we die, there is something that we go to when we cross over. And all of you who have lost somebody, and all of us are going to go here to the orientation center. What happens is, let me think, I don't want to forget something. Oh yeah, my near-death experience, I skipped the whole tunnel, the whole white light. I skipped all of that, and I went right here to this building. This is what the orientation center looks like on the other side. So this is the closest building that I could find to what this building looks like. This is actually a building in Turkey, and it's called the Temple of Artemis. And it's the closest to what I saw when I had my near-death experience. I could not find a picture to represent what was actually in here, so try to visualize with me if you can. When somebody dies, they leave their body, they go through the tunnel, and everybody's heard about this part, right? They go through the tunnel, they see the white light, and when they cross over that white light, this is where they end up. The tunnel, well, I'll mention that in a minute, but the white light that everybody hears about, it comes from the other side. It comes from these doorways that I'm going to explain to you what they are. Inside here, if this was the orientation center that I saw, it was so long. It went for miles and miles. I could not see where the end was. That's how long it was. Inside, I think I can, if you guys can just picture this. If you can picture beautiful marble cut doorways out of the marble, like someone just took a saw and cut these doorways out of the marble. This is what they look like. Beautiful doorways, or think of them as tunnels, because that's really what they're, more like tunnels. And the tunnel was right here for, let's say it was right here, for example. It was about 5 feet long, and there was a table that sat right in the middle, or actually it was about 5 feet from the door. It was a marble table with 4 benches on it. And then to the right of that were these columns. When somebody passes, they go through the tunnel, they see the light, and what they're seeing is the light of God's love. That's what beckons them to come back home. That's what gives them the directions so they don't get lost. You know, you hear about people's spirits or souls, or they become ghosts. Sometimes that's what happens. But the light of God is what draws them in to this tunnel. Now see if you can picture this. You've got these tunnels, and these tunnels are about 6 feet apart, and they go all the way down as far as you can possibly see. And along with the tunnels are these tables. At each one of these tables, there are 2 people, either 2 men, 2 women, or a man and a woman are sitting there. And they are called orientation counselors. What their job is to make sure that they help people get from their earth life to the other side without feeling like they just, because a lot of times you just don't remember where you're coming from. A lot of times if you're 80 or 90 years old when you pass from this lifetime, you're not going to remember where you're going. So the orientation counselors help people get where they're going. Okay, here's where my guide came in. My guide, did I kind of picture that? Did everyone get a picture of that in your mind now, what I'm talking about? Okay, because that's going to be important. My guide told me, he said, I want you to go look in the left tunnel, the one that was right next to me. There had to be thousands of these, so I was standing in the middle of this entire complex. He said, walk over and look in the first tunnel. So I walked over, and I looked in the tunnel. What I could see was like looking in a telescope. I saw stars, and I saw galaxies. It was absolutely magical. So that told me that when people cross and they're going through that tunnel, as they're looking around, they can see stars and galaxies. Isn't that just beautiful? It's absolutely a beautiful thing to have seen. It was incredible. Next, he told me to look to the second door. Watch what happens on the second door. So the first door, or the first tunnel I looked in, was the tunnel with the space. The second tunnel I watched. And as I watched that tunnel, a man came through. He was 80 or 90 years old. He was holding his chest just like this, and he put his hand up on the corner of the doorway. And my guide said that he had had a heart attack, and that was how he died in this lifetime that he was just in. He was coming through. The weirdest thing happened now. My guide said to watch what happens. One of the women that was standing here, or she was sitting, one of the women that was at the table, remember I talked about the orientation counselors? One of them stood up. She walked over. She took his hands in hers, and she walked back, and she sat down with him at the table, just like this. And she held his hands the entire time that she was talking to him. Now, my guide said to watch him. So I was standing over here, and I was watching him. It was about 6 feet away at this point. I could not hear what she was telling him, but she was talking to him the entire time. So as I was watching him, his appearance changed. His appearance began to change from that of an 80 or 90-year-old man to someone who was in their 20s or 30s. I didn't really understand why that was, so I asked this person. I didn't know what a spirit guide was. So I didn't know what to say, hey, spirit guide, what's going on here, you know? So I just said, what's happening? Or why is everyone 25 or 30? So that's the perfect age for people. People can appear at any age they want to, but they appear at age 25 to 30. After this, it was about, it could have been 2 or 3 minutes that she was talking to him. All of a sudden, his appearance changed to be 20 or 25 or 30. Then he stood up. Let's say that I was right, or let's say they were talking right on the inside of this part of the temple. He walked out. So he walked out to the right of the temple, and he walked down 3 steps, and he walked into this absolutely beautiful garden. They're called the gardens. And my guide said, follow him. So I walked around the column, and I went to see where he was going. And he walked down into this most beautiful garden that I have ever seen. I can't even put words to it. It was so beautiful. The colors of the flowers, the plants, the trees. It was absolutely extraordinary. And what was happening is right in front of him, like all of you guys, there were people standing there waiting to greet him from his lifetime. Can you imagine what that would be like? All the people that had gone before him, whether it was one of his kids, for example, or a spouse, or good friends, they were all there waiting for him when he crossed over. So it was a wonderful, beautiful reunion for him. Can you all visualize that? Okay, good. Something else that I thought was so fascinating. The grass they were standing on, the grass was like alive somehow. It was the most perfect kind of grass. It was green, but it was a kind of green that we don't know about here. And it was just beautiful. I see some of your heads. It was absolutely just a beautiful kind of experience to see the grass and the flowers. All right. Every time that my guide took me, or my guide, I should back up and say, he took me to every place that I saw. And what he did first is he took me to see the outside of something. And then he took me to see the inside of something. So does anyone know what this is? Yes. Yes, this is the Pantheon in Rome. What I did is I tried to find pictures that best represented what I was looking at. And on the other side, or home, a lot of the temples and the halls of learning, all these different places, many of them are built out of this kind of Greco-Roman architecture because it's so beautiful. I call this the Pantheon because that's what it is, but my guide didn't tell me that it was something. He just said, this is the building I'm going to show you next. But picture this building here as marble, beautiful marble white. This wasn't here. So what it was a beautiful circular building, and it had the columns all the way around the circumference. Can you visualize that? It was absolutely gorgeous. And what this building is, it's a building that we all go to when we plan our lifetimes. Lifetimes are planned. They don't happen by accident. And sometimes they take months or even years. Yeah.
I was in Rome, went to the Pantheon, and if I can recall, it's been a while, that front section was added on later.
Oh, no kidding.
The circular section
Oh.
is older.
You mean all
than the
this
front section.
was added later?
So I think that's very interesting what you're saying.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? So anyway, all of our lives are planned, and they go into a lot of detail. And this is the building that we go into when we plan a lifetime. Everybody goes through it. You plan who your parents are going to be. You plan who your kid's going to be. You plan where you're going to go for school. Where are you going to incarnate? What country? You're going to go to Africa, you're going to go to Europe, you're going to go to Australia, you're going to go to North America. All those things get planned. What also gets planned is when we're going to pass and leave this lifetime. As hard as that is to accept, most deaths are not an accident. And I know that's hard for people to believe, but that's what I got from my guide. That the deaths are also planned because we have to leave here. We have to leave somehow. So all of them are actually planned ahead of time. And the people that are left behind learn a great deal of knowledge by going through something like that. It's not pleasant because probably every one of you in this room that I have met has lost somebody. And you're wondering, why? We have to go at some point. And so we all choose when we're going to go. Oh yeah, we also choose careers over there. And I thought, where was I when we were talking about careers? Because was I not there? Because I love doing stuff like this, but I work with mutual funds. So I think they must have kicked me out when they were talking about that, because I don't know what happened. Yeah, I've been there for 18 years, so I guess that's planned. But it would. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm here now. Oh yeah, something else too. My guide told me to look up. So, oh wait a minute, that's right. He told me to look up, and I looked up, and I saw this window. And outside the window, there was the most beautiful lake I had ever seen. There are so many bodies of water on the other side. They're beautiful. So the lake had, have you ever seen weeping willow trees? You know how beautiful they are? Well, the weeping willow trees were inside, they were floating on top of the water, all the way around the whole perimeter of this lake. It was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. It looked like glass, not a ripple. And the water was crystal. It was like the color of your shirt. What's your name? I'm sorry, I forgot. Chris? It was the color of your shirt. That kind of blue. It was absolutely, and you could actually see the bottom. That's how gorgeous it was. Something that I still to this day don't fully understand, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Inside this building, when we plan our lifetimes, we plan our lives on scrolls. You all can imagine like those old parchment papers that you fold out like this? That's what we plan our lifetimes on, and we write them out. My guide took me to a table, kind of like just like a table like this, but again, it was beautiful marble table. And on the table were two scrolls. One was in blue ribbon, and the other was in red ribbon. And I didn't think to ask my guide, what is the difference between that? I had no idea what it was, so I picked up the blue one, and I took the ribbon off, and I went like this, and I unrolled it. And I could immediately tell that it was done in calligraphy. You know that kind of writing that you have to take an inkwell? Or yeah, you know what I mean, right? You take an inkwell and you write on there. It's that kind of writing. I thought, wow, I could actually learn something about my life. So I unrolled it, and as soon as I tried to read it, it folded back up again. You know what I mean? We're not allowed to read anything about our lifetimes while we're here. Anybody know why that is? Any ideas? Yeah, Gary? Exactly. We test ourselves. On the other side, we actually plan our lifetimes, and we plan them to test ourselves, because on the other side, everything is perfect. It's not like it is here, where so many things are random. It's perfect. All right, which of you history buffs knows what this is? Yes, who said Parthenon? Okay, it's the Parthenon on the Acropolis. So a lot of you are correct. The next building that I saw looked like this. It was different than the Orientation Center. That had really narrow columns. This one had really large, round columns out front that were very sturdy and looked similar to this. So again, my guide showed me the outside of the building, and then he showed me the inside. This is the closest picture. This is a picture from Harvard's library. This is the closest picture I could find to what this library looked like. Have any of you ever heard the word akashic? Okay, good, okay. At the time my guide told me this, I had no idea what he was talking about. what is the Kishik, and it's the Kishik records, which is all knowledge, is what he told me. So this library, again, like that orientation center, it was so large. Like if I was standing here looking down, I could not see an end to the building. That's how large it was. And the same thing with these. The library was so pristine and so perfect. It was almost like God's mind, because all knowledge existed here. All knowledge that ever was, will be, is here in this building. Okay, picture this, because I couldn't find a picture of this, so try to visualize with me on this one. He took me to the very far end of the library. So he took me to the very far end where the left wall was. And what was there, they had these rooms. And they were just, you know how like libraries now have private rooms you can go reserve and stuff like that? Well, this library had rooms like that. They were probably maybe 10 or 15 feet in length and width. And you could walk down 3 steps into this room. It was like a sunken, it was really a neat looking room, how these things were set up. But they were called viewing rooms. And my guide said, look to the one to your left. So I looked to the one to my left, and it was right about as far from where I am to that wall. And there was a girl in there. She had black jet, how do you say that? Yes, that's exactly what it is. She had that. Yes, as dark, as black as it could be, that's what she had, jet black hair. And it went down to her waist. She was sitting there with her back towards me. She was watching what I thought looked like a flat screen television. So I leaned in a little bit to see what she was watching. She was watching a battle between the Native Americans and the cavalry. And I thought, she's actually watching a movie on the other side. What else could it possibly be, right? What was that? Yes. Did you all hear what she said? The real battle. So I asked my guide, I said, if she's watching a movie, there were no movie cameras back then. How could she be watching a movie? And he said, all things are recorded. Everything in our lives is recorded by God. It can all be viewed. So here she was on the other side, watching a battle that really took place 200 or 300 years ago. So this has got my mind thinking, oh my gosh, these viewing rooms, you can go inside a viewing room and you can watch any part of history that you want to watch. And it's not just history about this planet, it's other planets also, and we'll talk about that. Here's something else that'll blow your mind. This is why your loved ones don't come to you right away, because they are having a blast over there. It's like a Disneyland for adults. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that. So what was I talking about? Okay, I was watching the movie, and remember the doorways that I talked about in the orientation center? In these viewing rooms, the same doorway exists, the same kind of marble doorway, but it's in the back. So when you walk down the stairs, you sit down, the very back it's like this. It's like a door like this, but maybe just a little bit wider. And what it is you can go into living history. There was like, in the back of the wall, over here in the back of the wall, there were like little chips about the size of your fingernail that you can take out, and you go to this machine and you can put it in, and you can actually pick what kind of history you want to see. So that's what this girl did. She went to the wall where there are thousands of these little chips, and she put it in, and she wanted to watch and learn about that particular era of the US history. Well, with the rooms, with that doorway, if you put a chip in to watch a video or something like the live event, you can actually go into living history. Nobody can see you because it's the past. But if you have an interest in learning how do they actually build the pyramids, you can go into that room, take a chip out that represents that history, put it in, and you can actually go there and you can smell it, you can see it, you can touch it. It's absolutely fantastic. It's like Harry Potter. Don't you guys think? It's fantastically wild. So if you wanted to learn about what was Jesus' life really like, what really happened with that man, you can go see it. I've always had an interest in World War II. Always fascinated by that. So if I was over there, I would take the chip to the invasion of Normandy, France, 1944, World War II. And I would actually go in because I'd want to see what those men went through while they stormed the beaches of Normandy. And that's what you can do in this room, in the viewing rooms. Exactly, you wouldn't get shot. Go, whoa, that didn't hurt at all. That was crazy. So this is called, well, I just called it the huge library. He didn't tell me what it was other than maybe the Akashic records. Every time that my guide showed me another building, I tried to go on Google and I tried to find what it best looked like. The castle that he was showing me looked the most like this. He told me to, again, as he showed me the outside, then he told me to go to the inside. So I walked in, and the first thing that I noticed was a beautiful, red, pristine carpet. Just like I felt like I was royalty when I was walking on it. So I walked in to this castle, beautiful large wall on the left-hand side, beautiful large wall on the right-hand side. So I walked over to the left-hand side, and what I looked at, there were paintings on this wall, and what they were, life-size portraits of every single queen and king or royal that had ever lived in this castle before. And try to picture this if you can. A podium being in front of every single picture. So it was a podium, and on the podium there was also a book, and it looked like maybe it was like a spread open Bible, maybe something like that. That's what it looked like. What that booklet was it was a counting of every single thing that person did in his or her lifetime. Can you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you guys? Where they were born, what kind of school they went to, who their parents were, what they were like. It was a total account of how that person lived his or her life. And because that person was responsible for others, also conversations were recorded in that book. And the conversations were about what were they doing to other people? Did they care about other people? Or were they just tyrants? Because it was a public figure, conversations were also recorded in that booklet. So imagine, if you can, these paintings on this wall, all the way down, life-size portraits of what they looked like, podiums in front of each picture. With the podium, with the book described that person's life. So if you were looking at a picture, you're like, who is that person? He looks familiar from life. If you walked over and you flipped open the cover of the book, it said what that person's name was. So King Henry or Princess Anne, that's what it was. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys why to this day I still kick myself because of this event. How psychic am I? Not at all. I didn't get any gifts from this either. You know, I hear about some people who have near-death experiences, they get gifts. I got nothing. So as I looked at this wall, I thought, I want to go look at the other wall, and I want to see what's on that wall also. It was the same kind of pictures with podiums, all that. So as I went to walk over to this wall, I saw a woman. You guys know how inside castles, they have the circular stairways? Okay. As I walked over to the right side of this castle on this other wall, there was a woman who was walking down the stairwell. She had reddish blonde hair. She was wearing a red gown with a golden sash around it, and she had red sandals on. When she got down the stairs, she looked at me and she said, "Hi, can I help you find anything?" Here's where I have eternally blundered myself. What do you say when you walk into a retail store? Exactly. That's exactly. What I said to her was, no thanks, I'm just looking. I could have asked this girl, where am I? What's going on? I'm supposed to be having surgery on my hand. Where am I? Who are you? What's going on? What is happening? And all I said was, oh, no thanks, I'm just looking. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. She's like, oh, that guy blew it. I asked him a perfectly good question and he blew me off. So anyway, that was my blunder with the castle experience. Well, here's something else. How many of you like history? You like history, you like learning about history, so do your loved ones. And so did this girl. This girl's job, by the way, jobs don't exist over there like they exist here. You have your work that you love to do, but you don't have to go to a job to pay your bills. Does that kind of make sense? This sounds better all the time, doesn't it? How soon do I get to go back? We're thinking. Your spouses, your kids, everyone's having a great time and we're all stuck here. Yeah. So anyway, this girl loved this period of history. She just loved it, and that's what they do. They pick something that they love. Her whole job on the other side, besides having fun, she liked to help people learn about this type of history. Now, over there, every single castle that was ever built in Europe is duplicated on the other side. They're all over there. Each different castle has someone like that girl who knows everything about that type of history, who the king was, who the queen was, what were they like, were they tyrants, were they kind, were they trying to help the people that they served. She knew everything, like a scholar would. She knew about battles that they had, wars, anything you wanted to learn about, you could go ask her. And you could also read that person's booklet, but she was there to ask you or to answer any questions you might have. So that was the castle experience that I had. Again, it was absolutely beautiful. This is a planetarium. I wanted to show you this because the next place my guide took me to was like a planetarium, but it was larger. Have any of you not been in a planetarium before? I'll just give you kind of a brief review. A planetarium is a building that you go into where they can actually project and they can show what your constellations look like. They can show you what the planets look like. They can show you what the galaxy looks like, and they show it on the top of the screen. Well, my guide showed me the outside. The outside of the building was a round building with a domed roof. This is where someone else started talking to me. The whole time before, it was my guide who was telling me what I was seeing. He told me I was looking at a planetarium, but another voice kicked in. I was standing in the middle of this huge planetarium where it probably had 1,000 seats. It was huge. I was in the middle, and I think it's because he put me there. I just ended up where he put me. So I was in the middle of this planetarium. Another voice said, "Let's begin." So the lights went off, and I sat down, and I looked up at the ceiling. The voice said, "When you look at the stars, this is what you see." Now what that statement was, everybody on the earth, everyone on earth has this kind of limited knowledge. When you look at the stars, this is what you see. And on the top, they started showing all of our planets: Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars. All of our planets began showing on the top of the planetarium. And then our galaxy showed up, the Milky Way. All of a sudden, those disappeared. And the voice said, "When we look at the stars, this is what we see." And he was referring to everybody on the other side who has a more expanded knowledge than you do when you're in the physical body. So when you look at the stars, this is what you see, or this is what we see. Planet after planet after planet began showing up. First it was dozens, then it was hundreds. Thousands of different planets began showing up. Different galaxies began showing up. Hundreds, then thousands of different galaxies. And the voice said, "There is far more life in the universe than you can possibly know." Here's something else. How many astronomy fans do we have in the audience? Anybody? Okay, good. Janice. I like astronomy, but I never took a class because the math was too hard. You know what I mean? 50 billion is a large number. If you look at the Milky Way galaxy, our home galaxy that we're in right now, astronomers estimate that we have 100 to 200 billion stars in our galaxy. That's a large number to try to visualize. 100 to 200 billion. That's the number of stars we have just in our galaxy. If only a fraction of those stars had planets that had a solar system, that means there are millions and millions of other planets, probably even billions of other planets that are out there. What this picture represents is a picture that was taken in 2002 by the Hubble telescope. Does anybody know what the Hubble telescope is? Some people? Okay. The Hubble is a telescope that orbits the Earth. It was launched in, I think it was 1995 that they launched this telescope, and it orbits the Earth. And there's a reason why I'm showing you guys this. I want to kind of give you a depth and a breadth of what your loved ones are doing. Don't get me wrong, nobody leaves anywhere until you get back. Does that make sense? Nobody goes to reincarnate. Nobody goes to some other planet. Nobody leaves until their loved ones get back. So I just want to say that first ahead of time. In 2002, the Hubble telescope focused at a point in space, like if you look through a straw at this point in space where it was just blackness, there was no stars or anything. That's what this telescope looked at for 11 days. When they took the pictures back and developed them, this is what they found. Every single mark that you can see on the slide is a galaxy. There are 10,000 galaxies on this picture. Yeah, 10,000 galaxies. So what that tells me are there are millions and millions of planets that have life. Here's what my guide told me next. My guide said, Earth is not the only planet you can incarnate on, but this is the hardest one. Yeah, this is the hardest one. We lose people. You got to go to a job. You got to pay your bills. This is the hardest one. So can you imagine how many planets are out there that we can all go to, that we can incarnate on? It's absolutely mind-blowing. Do you kind of get how that's just like, oh my gosh, how can that possibly be? It's phenomenal. All right, that was my escapade into the Hubble telescope. Because I love astronomy, I just can't do the math. Okay, how many of you have ever heard of a life review? Okay, almost everybody. Okay, good. We do go through life reviews. And my guide showed me that we go through a life review. He said, this building here is what they have life reviews in. And I don't remember there being any seats, but it was the closest that I could find to what it looked like inside this building. The only difference was, instead of there being one movie screen, it was all in a big circle. There were screens around the entire top of this. So anywhere you stood, you could look and you could see a different part of your lifetime playing. Does that make sense to everybody? Nobody judges your life. Only you do. One thing I forgot to mention to you, when I was talking about the Pantheon building, the one where you plan your lives, your guide goes with you. You don't plan your life by yourself because you need a different perspective. Your guide is there to help you. In here, when you do your life review, it's just you and your guide. God doesn't judge you. God doesn't send you to hell. Okay? So it's very possible that, and I don't know when they do this, I only know it's after they have the reunion. They don't do a life review before they have the reunion, because everyone's waiting for you. They're like, okay, John's coming back, or Gary's coming back, or Chris is coming back. So they wait. So that's what that is, the life review. There is also, now this might be a little controversial for some of you, but it's what they told me, and it's what I saw. My guide said, I want to show you 3 different past lifetimes. Now at the time when I had this, I was raised a Catholic. I had this experience when I was 21 years old. So my orientation was Catholicism. And I never heard anybody ever talk about reincarnation. But it's real. People reincarnate. That's how you go to these other planets. And you come here and you have past lifetimes. If you ever want to look at this, I would highly recommend going to a past lifetime therapist, because I didn't believe it until I went through it. And it's up here. This is what he showed me. Look, and the chairs were gone, and the screen was, they only had one screen. When you go in to look at different lifetimes, there's just one screen. Now, there might be other buildings, but this is the one that he took me to. He showed me 3 different lifetimes. One was I was a shoe peddler, and I fixed people's shoes. And I had a wheelbarrow, and this lifetime was somewhere in Eastern Europe, from what I got. I had a wheelbarrow, and I had people's shoes that I fixed, and I dropped them off at their house. That was the first life that I had. The second one was of a monk. I was really tall. I had a shaved head, and I was wearing a red gown. And my job was to train and teach these young boys how to be monks. That was my job. And the third lifetime that he showed me was I was in a boat, a little rickety old boat, and I had a net, and I threw it out and I caught fish for the village. That lifetime was somewhere in Greece. So that was how he showed me different past lifetimes are real. This one, how many sports fans do we have? Okay, a lot of sports fans. This picture represents a couple of different things. Again, I went online trying to find the picture that best represented what I had seen. Anybody who loves sports, anybody who, like Wendy, didn't your husband like tennis? Okay, I was talking to. Any sport that you like, any sport that you loved when you were a kid, you can play to your heart's desire on the other side. Anything that you want to, whether it's soccer, whether it's football, whether it's lacrosse, whether it's tennis or golf, any sport that you want to play, you can play over there. And there are miles and miles of sports fields and sports arenas. It's just, if you're a sports fan and you love playing sports, that's what heaven is. It's absolutely beautiful. I chose this because this is actually a field in the Netherlands. And I chose this slide because it best represents the colors that are on the other side. And as colorful as this is, it was far more colorful in person. The smells, the aromas, the different kinds of flowers that they have, it's just absolutely amazing. Far richer and more colorful than this. All right. Here's something I know from talking to a lot of you that this will be important. Not only do we cross and survive death, because we all do. We all age, we're all going to cross. Nobody crosses on the other side. There's no disease over there. There's no death. There's no starvation. None of that exists. It's like this world perfected. Not only do we cross, but these guys do too. Any animal that you've ever loved, whether it's dogs, cats, horses, anything like that, crosses and they play together on the other side. They play together in these beautiful, magnificent fields. They're absolutely beautiful. And my guide showed me where they keep them. They're all play together. They're all young. They're all disease-free. They're all there waiting for you when you come back to the other side. So if you and your spouse may have had an animal together, your spouse is playing with your animal and took them back to their home, because people have homes over there, just like we do here. But you can have a house whatever kind of house you want just because you want it. Not because, yeah, it's wonderful. So all of your animals exist. Okay, to close this up, the last thing that my guide showed me, he took me to a field. Again, it was a beautiful field, and it had grasses. The grass was as high as my knee, and I could feel the grass, and it was smooth, and it smelled incredibly good. A man showed up, and he was about 2 feet from me. He was different than everybody else. I couldn't see his face. His face was glowing. It had like bright energy to it, but I could not see his face. But I could see the rest of his body. I could see his hands. I could see his feet. He was wearing a white robe. Oh, something else I forgot to mention to you guys. The reason everybody wears robes and tunics over there, you ever wonder why? That's exactly, it's because it's the most comfortable. You can wear jeans and cowboy boots, but most people wear gowns because they're free and they can move around easily. Just a side note. So anyway, this man was different than the other people that I saw. And he spoke to me, and he did this. And he was laughing and smiling, and he said, "You must tell them there is no death." And this is the best picture I could find for that.
Wow.
So guys, know that anybody who has passed, they love you, they're waiting for you to come back. You don't have to be afraid of dying.